Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Salem Chamber for this important topic. For those of you watching live, we appreciate you being online. As always, all of our programming will be up on our YouTube channel within 2 days of production. Given that this is a Thursday, you will see this production likely on Monday afternoon. So I want to recognize Dan Johnson, who is our Director of Marketing Communications, films all our events. Very humble and quiet, but incredibly skilled at what he does. Jackie Ellerbrock, our operations director in back. Kelly Gosman, who works on our McLaren Leadership Foundation. Jackie Roche, the master of membership upgrades, sponsorship. I encourage you to get with her. And I am Jameson Gideon is outside, of course, who puts together our strategic programming and advocacy. And then we have our wonderful board team led by President Ted Ferry. We're going to shortly do introductions. You're going to see me talking pretty quick. We're going to get through an aggressive agenda. We have 1 hour today, 2 very important topics, and you, our members, are going to be asked to cast a vote. If you are here as a member of this organization, which certainly you all are, you have 1 vote per business. So for instance, I'm going to use them as examples. They're dear friends. The Beirutis are here. Their organization is a member. They will get 1 vote collectively between them. As I mentioned, my name is Tom Hoffert with the Salem Chamber. I have the opportunity to serve as CEO. We love hosting important events like this. It is important, as we always do, to provide both sides of every discussion we're having in our community. Today, we are going to have 2 topics. We're going to kick off with the the recently signed ODOT gas tax and funding transportation package. We will follow that by a proposal on the nullification of the estate tax, so that will occur the second half. At the conclusion, and this is why I will ask all of you to hang around to the end, we are going to take your votes. We have these advocacy sheets, which you can cast your vote on. And again, every company gets 1 vote. Once you have your vote, if you fold it over, we will collect those and we will tally them up on the board for those that wish to stay. If not, they will be published, obviously, through our business advocacy channels. Your word today serves as a recommendation to our board of directors. We're managed by a 25-person board of directors team representing all industries, ethnicities, ages, you name it. We are a cross-section of our membership, which is extremely healthy. Thank you all for being members. To start today, we are going to rather than me telling which side is going to speak first, we're going to go to a respected tradition with one of the few last pennies. Covet these because they're all going away.
It's like a football game.
I know. I'm so stressed out. I'm like, do I want to start? Do I want to end? I don't even know. Heads. Heads.
Oh, okay, I see.
Heads.
Heads is the call. It is, in fact, heads.
So now I have to decide? Or I go first?
You'll be going.
Okay, I was like, do I get to decide if like, what does it work?
For clarity, and I'm going to start our clock. We would like to be very transparent. Both speakers will receive 10 minutes and 10 minutes precisely to present their side of this issue, and then we'll go to group discussion. But again, at 2:30 on the dot, we're going to relieve our speakers and move to our second topic. With that, with no further delay, Melissa, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Unger. I'm the Executive Director of SEIU Local 503. In the state of Oregon, we represent state of Oregon employees. We represent home care and personal support workers who care for people in their homes. We represent nursing home workers, local governments, university employees. We represent about 60, 70,000 members in the state of Oregon. And I'm here today because we represent the men and women who work at ODOT. And so there's been lots of transportation packages over the decades. I've been in politics for a long time. I've never really been very involved in them until this one, because we represent about 1,500 men and women who take care of our roads, who make sure that landslides are cleaned off, who make sure that there's guardrail when people are driving, who make sure it's painted so they can see at dark. And right now in July, when session ended, about 500 of them got layoff notices. And so that's why I sit here today. I sit here really talking about their experiences, but I'm actually not as good about it as they are. So I'd like to queue up a couple of videos for them to talk about the work they do at ODOT.
Transportation. In 2019, they put me through drone school and find ODOT projects ever since. In 2021, I went out to the landslide on I-84 and pretty quickly found the bumper of a vehicle that had been swiped off the roadway that had Jennifer Moore inside. Won many projects. I think I have a valuable service to the state. I'm really shocked and sad that we're losing so many coworkers, especially our valued maintenance workers. My job ends the end of the month, and I'm just hoping the governor sees this and sees us, the ones that are getting let go, and sees value in us. It's been a really hard time for a lot of us, and we're really devastated. And I thought, being a drone pilot, you can do just about anything. And then on top of it, being a female in the field, I just never thought my position would be devalued in any way. So I'm very heartbroken and sad, but not just for me. I'm heartbroken for the maintenance crews, and I know how hard they work every winter because I'm there filming them do it. And I've got the easy job. So I hope the governor sees this and recognizes us and does something to help them.
Yeah, go ahead to the second one.
You're first responder, we will go to the scene of an accident, make sure that people are safe. You will wait for speed to show up, or say please, minutes. We'll close the road down, make sure they get off the road safely. Clean up the area, make sure traffic. Very busy highway, we deal with a lot of snow here. I work with a snowplow, I work with a loader. Yeah, lot sides up. Our section, crystal sky, see the stars. Another part of the section, about 10 miles down, it'll be snowing. They're going to be extending our work zones about 300. Those around. Months, single parent, actually, those are been, so he started asking, what's stuff on, and I said, everything's okay, I don't talk to him, but I know I can hear her and change her, but I feel like they'll be. I think that I've done is somebody else's decision. I'm homeless. I only have 24 hours and 14 screws back into it. I have to go off site after I get laid off. So I'm going to be on a job. I have to go find a place to live. And this is a lot of people that be affected the same way. On site, but I don't know some person. I'm a single father. I don't even know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Where I'm gonna go and throw this. If you guys can work together in legislature, figure out something. For a lot of other families, like I said, that I don't really cut because I don't have this. But I'm good here, but that's a pretty good job, but this is another key step. This is the fact that they don't say that.
Thank you. So those videos are the reason we were involved in this. We didn't write this policy. We didn't write the laws that say that maintenance and safety are funded by a gas tax. Our members got hired by ODOT to do a job, to keep our roads safe. And just the other day, they were the ones on site when 101 flooded. And as we enter winter season, if this referral goes through and it gets on the ballot, funding will be stopped immediately. It doesn't matter if it passes or fails, because funding will be stopped immediately until it passes or fails at the ballot. And so in January, right now, I just on a call with the ODOT workers last night. They're being told by managers they might get laid off before Christmas. They don't know. We know that most likely these signatures will get handed in and will make the ballot. Right now, that guy does not know if he has a job before Christmas because there's no plan. They didn't do anything except take jobs and keep our roads safe. There was a guy on this call the last night who was going to work. He was on the call. It was 6:30 at night, and he was going to work at 2 a.m. to make sure that the roads were safe. But he needed to get on the call to try to find out if he was going to have a job. And they just went through this for 3 months. They had no idea if they were going to have health care. They knew it and had no idea if they were going to have a job. We didn't write this bill. We supported the only bill that had a chance of passing in the legislature to keep our roads safe and to keep people on the roads, to keep other people safe. That's all we did. And I think the problem is with this referral and with the conversation is there's no plan. None of the proposals put together during session would have ever passed with that legislature with 31 votes. Some of them just defunded transit altogether. By the way, that's not going to pass, nor is it going to be supported. So there's been no plan. The one plan that went forward, they didn't even refer the whole package. So we keep the costs that come with the package that passed, potentially like implementing new weight mile tax, all of that costs money, that costs IT. Who's going to do it? There's going to be no workers. Because on January 1st, these workers will be slung back into chaos. They will not know if they have a job during the most dangerous season in Oregon to be driving on our roads. And this is not just about, me getting to work. This is about how we move all of our freight, how we make sure our economy stays working. What is the plan? And I think as we really look at this referral, that's the question. Because now this goes to the ballot in 10 months. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't have the money to fund, so they have to make the cuts now. So there's no like stopgap. We're going to propose we stop all projects. We shouldn't fund any projects until we do this. Great. The legislature should take that up. That's not a long-term solution. And I'm pretty sure those projects were really important. We're going to propose some other small cost savings to save a person's job. Great. We should totally do that too. We should try to save as many people's jobs as we can. And that is not a long-term solution to fund ODOT. The reality is our transportation system is built upon gas taxes and DMV fees. That's what funds it. With mass inflation and driving habits changing, there has to be a plan. It can't be just cut this and cut that, because that's not sustainable. So as I sit here and this referral is probably going forward, I will continue to do what I did when I advocated for these workers 6 months ago. What is the plan to keep our roads safe? What is the plan to make sure workers who do that work have good jobs? And what is the plan to communicate to Oregonians about what it costs to deliver services in the state? I work with home care workers every day who talk about affordability. I do not deny that that is real and it is important. And that can't be the only conversation we're having. It has to be a part of the conversation. Let's have a conversation about how maybe we give a tax break to people who can't afford their gas. That's a good idea, but that's not the conversation. Because all we're doing is just having a reactive conversation that doesn't center those folks who do this work and keep our roads safe during the most dangerous time of our state. So thank you very much.
We're now going to turn it over to Representative Diehl, provide the other side of this equation. Poll, please, Ed. Thank you, sir. And your time is yours, sir.
All right, thank you. Those stories of the workers are, they are concerning and they're heart-wrenching. And it's cynical that the governor put them in that position, because it doesn't have to be that way. And that's our position. And I'll explain that more. But the thing is, guys, this ship has sailed. Oregonians do not want their taxes and fees increased on transportation. We have over 200,000 signatures gathered by volunteers in record time. It's never been done in this state. I've never seen a message sent by the voters more soundly than this. So this ship has sailed. And what we want is we want to prioritize maintenance. We want maintenance workers working. We want our roads plowed. We want that to be the priority. But unfortunately, the legislature and the governor, not just now, but in past years, has deprioritized maintenance over other issues. We have hundreds of millions of dollars tied up in mega projects that are far from construction and frankly, will probably never get built. I look at the Rose Quarter project. This thing should be, $400 million, $500 million. to expand the lanes, the through lanes that go through that area. It doesn't even have additional through lanes, and it's I think approaching a $2 billion project. It's an urban renewal project, and it will never happen. Yet they're sitting on hundreds of millions of state dollars for that project. We've seen growth in administrative and PR folks, climate. We have a social equity and civil rights division within ODOT that costs us $24.9 million. We fund passenger rail, $38 million. We have EV charging stations. We have a fund that has 19 million in state dollars sitting there for EV charging stations. The governor talks about affordability, but yet she did a PLA mandate, project labor agreement mandate, that's going to increase costs of all these projects 15 to 20%. The Newburgh-Dundee project, I think, was 22% higher because of the PLA. We have a huge amount of budgeted and unspent funds within the ODOT as it is. And the thing is, legislative priorities in the past have really hamstrung ODOT. And I know a lot of ODOT workers. They signed this petition. They gathered signatures. I had SEIU workers sign this petition and gather signatures. 2% of all the money raised in the 2017 bill, just 2% could go to ODOT maintenance. The rest was targeted to other areas. And that's what we want to change. We want to prioritize what the Oregon people want to prioritize, which is maintenance. And I look at this, it's a crisis by design, because the governor knows that you can't go to taxpayers and say, hey, we got to fund the civil rights and social equity division, and we got to fund our DEI office, and we got to fund EV charging stations, so we're going to raise your taxes and fees. That won't fly. So they mandate those things and then come to you and say, if you don't raise taxes and fees, we can't plow your roads. It's BS. It's cynical. There's a lot of evidence of mismanagement within the organization. Somehow the Abernathy Bridge, which was never funded in 2017, it was discussed as a study. Somehow they found $50 million for that. I'm wondering why didn't that go to regular maintenance? But I want to step back. I want to step back and look at the bigger picture here. It's good to look back at Oregon, the overall budget, whenever you're asked to pay more, right? So if I go back to 2015 and I look back at the budget in 2015, that was $70.8 billion. The discussion at the time with that budget, the economy was strong. We had money coming in. There was planning for a kicker. It was generally a positive outlook. I look now in 2025, 10 years later, our state budget is $138.9 billion. Almost double. And they're telling us they don't have enough. They do not have enough. Now I adjust for inflation. I adjust for population increase. You know, that counts for about 42% of the growth, but 58% of that spending in an expanded government. Now, does anybody here feel like they're getting value for that? Is our education system any better? Is the homeless and drug addiction problem any better? I'm not seeing it. And I don't think Oregonians are either. And that's why they're pushing back so hard on this tax and fee increase. You know, and this amounts to this is for each Oregon resident, $32,000 in federal state taxes for each Oregon resident that we're facing right now. It's a $40 billion chunk just in this biennium of additional budget that you can't explain with population increase and inflation. And over the 10 years, it's hundreds of billions of dollars. Where's that money going? Where's that money going? And to come to us with that kind of massive growth in the state budget, where people aren't feeling the return on that, and then ask us for more, I think is outrageous. I also think that we have this thing a little backwards. we're asking you to pay more money, and then we will audit. We will do a detailed performance audit of ODOT. That is, who runs their business that way? That is backwards. You want more money? I'm going to do an audit, a deep performance audit, and figure out where the money is right now, how you're using it, what's wasted, what could I save, what could I change in prayer before I'm going to give you any more money. That's what needs to happen. So what I would like to see is a really Doge style independent performance audit of ODOT, looking at unspent and rolled forward project funds. A lot of the overruns we've had on these mega projects that are still not going anywhere. We've spent $250 million designing and studying an I-5 bridge, a $10 billion bridge that really should cost $3 billion. The impacts of PLAs. We have vacancies that we funded. How much money's there? And really, we need to align ODOT's mission with its core mission. It has got off mission. So there's a lot of things that I think would come out of a true independent audit of that kind, a really deep performance audit. We'll learn a lot, and then we can talk about whether we need to raise taxes or not. So this referendum keeps the bill intact, except for the 4 tax and fee items. The gas tax increase, the registration fee increases, title fee increase, and the doubling of the statewide payroll transit tax. FYI, we're the only state in the country that has a statewide payroll transit tax. And we're going to double it. Whether you live in a town with a bus or not, you're paying a statewide payroll transit tax. That amounts to well over $4 billion of taxes overnight. So in closing, I think actually this is a healthy process for us to go through. I think that Oregonians are finally saying, I've had enough. I'm paying through the wazoo in more taxes, but I'm not seeing a return on it. I was talking to a business guy up in Portland. He's planning on moving his business out of the state. He came from New York and bought a business in the Portland area. He said, I paid a lot of taxes in New York City, but I got something for it. Come here to Portland. I'm paying a bunch of taxes in Portland. I'm not getting anything for it. Unless you guys change something, I'm picking up my business and I'm moving it to Arizona. And he wasn't kidding. So people are rightly questioning, where's my money going? Why are we have this exorbitant state spending? And really, we're facing some harder economic times coming up. And we're going to have to roll some of this spending back. But I think it's a healthy process to go through when you have 4 decades of one-party rule. I think people get lazy. And I think I'm actually quoting Congresswoman Dexter when I say that. People get lazy. The Democrats get lazy. The one party, whether it was Republican or not, get lazy. And they're not paying attention to the business of their agencies. I want to see us fix our priorities before raising taxes. I want to see maintenance prioritized. I want to see any maintenance workers laid off, and it doesn't have to happen. The legislature and the governor should get to work now because those signatures are going to the Secretary of State soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Diehl. Thank you, Executive Director Unger. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 minutes for Q&A. I am going to speak on behalf of our board team. I will interrupt you if you are giving context and the like. This is for questions and answers. With that, I will open it up to the floor. Yes, Cassie.
Has SEIU pushed for the style audit from ODOT to protect their workers?
Oh, we love an audit on our workers. We love an audit on an agency. Oftentimes we learn a ton of things from it. I want to be honest. In this process, it has been very difficult because we're not in control of it. And so, I think that one of the things that's been hard about it is that there's a lot of talking points about problems at ODOT. And we also know that the funding mechanism is not keeping up. So both those things are real. And so what is the conversation where people actually sit down and figure it out together? And I think that process has been really hard. And so we have been in a situation where we have supported any package that could pass that would save our workers' job. So we have not been running this process. We have been does this package have enough votes to potentially pass? oh, that seems like the package that's going to save our workers' jobs. So I think that's been the situation that workers have been in because there's really been no plan. I mean, like, I think that the plan that was just presented, there's parts of that were probably great ideas and there's parts of it that would never pass. So like the reality is like we're just following along, trying to figure out how do you maintain roads in this state and how can you have a good conversation about maintaining roads in this state. So we would never say to a no to an audit of an agency. Most of the time they center frontline workers, they center their voices and they identify problems that our workers would identify themselves.
Question, in your work with the legislature, for a number of years, have you been able to push them to prioritize maintenance?
No.
For people is a priority.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say every bipartisan package that passed before this prioritized projects. And that was not one party rule. Like those were bipartisan packages that passed in 2017, that passed in 2011, that passed in 2003. And that was, we never felt like they prioritized maintenance. And that was kind of what the legislators at that time, and they were always bipartisan. They were always embedded in projects. And I would say like, that's a part of this that's very fascinating to us. Because I think that, right now everyone's like, oh, let's get rid of the project. Well, I just know the moment that that's a part of the conversation, it's not like that's going to be an easy part of the conversation too, because those projects matter too. And they often matter to businesses and to general contractors and to like a bunch of people who prioritize those. Like a lot of people prioritize those rose garden projects. So I just think that like, that's the challenge. It's easy to have talking points until you have to come up with a solution that like actually can get the votes and pass. But we've never felt like maintenance and safety have been prioritized in ODOT packages before. Every bipartisan conversation that's happened before this has completely devalued it.
A retort by Representative Diehl.
So-
I'll remind you, we are on the clock.
Okay, yeah, so I agree that projects are important. The thing is, the projects we're seeing, these big projects, don't resemble anything that most Oregonians would think is a practical project. I'm not going to get into all those details. But when I say a 10 billion, they're designing a $10 billion bridge that could be done for 3 billion. I'm not kidding. And you look at that bridge, and you go, what the hell are they doing? You can't even run ships underneath it. It's too low. And she's right when she says that they couldn't get the votes. Now listen to what she's really saying. They couldn't get the votes in the legislature. The legislature is voting in a way that doesn't represent the will of the people. That's what's going on. You are forcing them to face that reality and prioritize maintenance and do it the way you want. That's why we have the referendum process in the first place. We were the first country or first state in the nation to implement it in 1902. And the reason we did it is we don't trust politicians and we don't trust the political power players to represent our interests.
Sure.
And that's why we're flexing our muscles right now.
Sure.
Why did we have the money to hire these folks yesterday, but we don't have the money to keep them today?
Yeah, it's been forecasted for a long time. That's why they came into session knowing they needed a transportation package. They went on a whole statewide tour. They did a bunch of work like in committee. This is not new. And it's because both people are driving less. People are driving electric cars that don't rely on gas. Like the whole funding mechanism for how transportation is funded is changing. And so that's why. So like the forecast is that will continue to like be impacted. And because, people don't go to work, like some people work from home now. So like the whole mix of how people are driving is changing. And that's the challenge. That was not new in July. They knew that a year ago, 2 years ago, and they couldn't figure it out. And so this was the only one that could pass.
Well, I want to emphasize this is, I agree with Melissa. This is not as much of an ODOT problem. It's definitely not an ODOT worker problem, but they're feeling the brunt of it. This is a legislative and a governance problem. They've ignored some realities for a long time.
Pardon me.
I don't know how long that gentleman found that video talked, how long he's worked for ODOT, but I'm assuming he's a good union paying guy. Does the union have anything in place to help offset sort of costs if he says that he's got nowhere to go? I mean, as a union dues paying member, could he come to SEIU? I need a help place to live. Did you guys abandon him? This is the time to leave?
Yeah, I mean, we can't, clearly we have 60,000 folks that we represent, so we cannot provide housing for everyone who potentially is in a housing crisis, but we did work on a letter of agreement that would give him more time in his housing to make sure that he was not kicked out within 24 hours after that was filmed. We worked with the state to come up with a letter of agreement that made sure that he had, I think, 60 days to be able to figure out how to move because it was a real crisis. We had multiple people who were going to get kicked out of their housing and we were very worried about how that would impact them.
What a whirlwind. We are through our time. Peter, I apologize, but we have a second topic. Ladies and gentlemen, Melissa Unger, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do a quick flip flop here. We're going to jump into our second topic. As our speakers may or may not have been in a room, this is a timed situation. We're going to go to a coin toss to determine who is going to speak first. You are going to make the call. If you wouldn't mind saying R or tails.
R or tails, yes. I will say tails.
Sure, tails. It is, in fact, you will be starting out, Representative Mannix.
Timer. Each of you will have 10 minutes. On behalf of my board team and myself, I will stop you at exactly 10 to make sure we have equitable time for both speakers. Representative Mannix, the floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin Mannix. I have a law firm here in Salem. January will be the 40th anniversary of my law firm, but I've also been in Salem since 1974, and I now represent Kaiser and North Salem as a state representative. I served previously as a state representative, left in 2001, came back in 2023, and I'm pleased to be here today. One of the things I've worked on over the years is to deal with the issue of death taxes. And we've had some success with this. In the 2023 session, we actually reformed the law to allow a break from death taxes for family-owned farms, ranches, and woodlands, so they can be kept in the family. That $15 million exemption has made a world of difference for those family-owned enterprises. Unfortunately, that is something of a glass ceiling that we have run into. We tried to talk about family-owned businesses. We've talked about families. We were unable to get any additional substantial reform of the death tax. I wrote down a quote from Benjamin Franklin. He's the one who originally said this in 1789. The only things that are certain are death and taxes.
Problem with Oregon is there's another thing that is certain is death taxes, not death and taxes. And everybody is dealing with the taxation situation where throughout your life, you're paying income taxes, you're paying business taxes, you're paying property taxes. And you die. And the state comes to you and says, by the way, we're going to tax you for dying. We're going to tax you for dying in Oregon. And by the way, here's a special invitation. Would you please leave the state, which is the kind of advice that everybody is getting now when they have any kind of an estate and they're doing their estate planning. Why? You can even go to California and not have a death tax. California, to the south of us, does not have a death tax. In the last 23 years, 38 states have eliminated their death taxes. There are 12 left. Which state has the worst death tax in the nation? Oregon. That's not something to be proud of. We have the lowest exemption level, and our rate competes with other states. It's 10 to 16%. So imagine what's confronting folks when they have to deal with death. They have to deal with all these other issues in the family, but then they have to also deal with paying the death tax. And many people may end up not having to pay the death tax, but they have to go through the process because their estate may be somewhere near the exemption level. And that means, I got the figure, you spend $6,000 to $10,000 for an estate tax return. And some 33% of the folks who have to file that return end up not having to pay a tax, but they had to spend money because the tax is on the books. But the worst thing that's happening is we have created an economic message for the rest of the United States and the world. Don't come here. We don't want you here. We don't want you to invest here because when you succeed and you've created jobs and then you die, we want to tax you again on top of everything you've had to pay, which is an extraordinary amount we already know throughout your life. We have an opportunity with Initiative Petition 51 to kill the death tax. And this is a very clear statutory initiative. I know we've handed out some sheets, so you've got the text of the elimination of the death tax. You've also got a petition sheet in case you decide you want to start circulating petitions. We need to raise 117,000 verified signatures by July. We have a ballot title. We're out there. We were pausing for a while because the folks who were doing the gas and transportation tax referendum had till December 31, and we didn't want to get in their way. They've been so successful. Now we're trying to ramp up faster and get out there. But we do have till the first week of July 2026 to get these signatures. But as you're looking at this and talking to your friends, I've handed out 12 points to consider about the death tax. What I want you to consider more than anything else is, I call it the issue from the heart. What are we doing to our people when we say to them, you've been successful and we want you to leave the state because we're going to tax you when you die. And that means 10 to 16% that doesn't go to your kids and your grandkids. And by the way, if you leave, you're no longer spending money on our economy. You're no longer contributing to all the charitable groups you may contribute to, because one of the other things that transfers when people move away is their allegiance shifts. And the sad fact of the matter is many people may still have a home here. They may risk having to pay a death tax on the property because if you own property, it doesn't matter if you reside somewhere else, if it's Oregon property. But they can live somewhere else for less than 6 months, and they're no longer paying the Oregon resident income tax. So the income they've received from international and national businesses, where they would normally be here in Oregon paying a tax, poof, it goes away. We've been unable to get a definitive figure from the Legislative Fiscal Office about this because it's hard to define. But I can tell you, if you talk around and listen around, a lot of successful people have moved away and are moving away, and we are losing what I call their own commitment to the community. They're no longer here. I talked to a very wealthy, wonderful person. I'll be very careful to be indefinite about this, who has done a lot to contribute to charitable causes in Oregon. And I had this conversation about, well, can you do something for this charitable organization? And the answer was, well, I'm now a resident of Montana, and I'm paying more attention to the community where I'm a resident now as to what I can do. And I've done my thing in Oregon, and Oregon wants to tax my state when I die, so I'm not a resident of Oregon. That is a message that is out there, and it is a chronic challenge for us. Imagine if we put this on the ballot and we kill the death tax and say, not only do we not want to be one of the 12 or the worst of the 12, we want to be one of the now 39 states that don't have a death tax. We want to compete on that. And there'll be other tax issues for us to address. But this is a breakthrough for us because the nation would notice, wow, Oregon voters decided to do a smart thing, a good thing. Now, I don't want to pretend that the supporters of the death tax are bad people. I think they're good people. I think they misunderstand the impact of the death tax on our society. And the impact is folks planning ahead. You want to take care of your family, you're retiring. Don't stay here. Talk to the accountants and the attorneys who do estate planning. Ask them what advice they're giving to folks. So in a way, we're inviting people not to come here to invest in our community, and we're also inviting them to leave. And it's gotten really bad because there is no inflation index on that death tax. The exemption of $1 million, that was the same way it was 23 years ago. There is no change in that. And if you look at the dynamics nationally, even that exemption should be $2 million. But I've stopped asking the legislature to adjust the death tax, because it's become clear to me that the one thing we were able to sell will not be sellable anywhere else in terms of businesses, people that have other investments in our community. It's not going to work. So we have initiative petition 51. We have just started ramping up the distribution of these petitions. You've each gotten a copy. Whenever you have anyone looking at it, you should have a copy of our one-page, it's not that long, piece of legislation, initiative petition 51. But when you look at it, look for something else. We're being proactive. There are two kinds of death taxes. There's estate taxes, which the estate pays before it pays out. And there's the inheritance tax, where you receive and then you pay a tax. We ban both of them. I don't even like that word nullification in the ballot. We don't just nullify it. We ban death taxes, estate or inheritance, but we do something else. For our friends in Multnomah County or Lane County, where local government seems to love, I'm sorry, I'm being critical, love to impose taxes, additional taxes, we forbid local estate or inheritance taxes. Tell your business friends in Portland and Multnomah County, we're watching out for them. We are going to prevent local estate or inheritance taxes. So we say, if you die in Oregon, first of all, God bless you for being here. Thank you for being here. And whether it's state or local, there will be no death tax imposed on your family. It's not, you're not paying it after you're in the grave. It's your family that has to pay it. And we don't want that to happen anymore. That's what this petition is about. I welcome your support, and you can find information from what I've handed out, and I've all done it with 37 seconds to spare.
We're seeing a new side of Kevin.
The clock helps.
The clock does help. I'd like to introduce you to President and Founder Jody Wiser for Tax Fairness Oregon. Jody, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I assume you can guess that I believe there should be a strong estate tax, and that Kevin and I have disagreed at the state legislature a number of times on this very issue. I think there should be a strong estate tax because it curbs the happenstance of being born into the right family. It curbs that's the winning of the birth lottery. It curbs the power of accumulated wealth. And we're seeing a lot of accumulated wealth right now in our society, and it's not good for democracy. We're really approaching where we were, in the 20s, where a few people are making all the decisions. And it helps build a society where there's more of an even chance for success for everybody's children. The chance for everybody to have a life of dignity. While it diminishes the wealth of some families, it helps support the structures of a thriving economy and thriving individual lives. Now, I'm not going to say that Oregon's $1 million exemption, that's the right number, because I don't think it is. It hasn't been indexed for inflation. And but I think there are other problems with the current law as well. Right now, you have to go to an estate tax lawyer and make plans in order to take the $1 million of the first to die and have it in the estate of the second to die automatically. That should be automatic, and it's called portability. There was a bill to do that this last session that didn't pass. It would cost the legislature about $9 million in less revenue. A biennium is the estimate for a particular bill, so it wouldn't cost very much. What Kevin is talking about would cost $300 million a year, eliminating the estate tax. And I'm not going to say 1 million is right just because it's $1 million, but also I want to point out that almost everybody that's born has two parents. So actually the exemption is $2 million, unless it's particularly if we get the portability fixed. And so it's true that a lot of houses have increased value, and a lot of people who are middle class or live middle class feel the pressure that their estate, which doesn't seem like that much, is going to pay the tax. But it is really $2 million that you have to have in a family in order to be required to pay any estate tax in Oregon. I don't think we should follow Washington State. They raised their exemption to $3 million, but they raised their top rate to 35%. Our top rate is 16%. I think if we raise the exemption, we'll probably need to raise the top rate a bit in order to make it revenue neutral, in order to make it so it can pay for itself. But I hope that Kevin and I will sit down and talk about how to create a bill that we will both support, because I do think that there's a problem that needs to be addressed. There are 18 states, not just 12, who have taxes upon death. There are some states that have an inheritance tax and some states that have an estate tax. And there's even one state that has both. It's basically the difference is whether the estate pays the tax or the inheritor pays the tax. That's the difference between those two words. Now, some will say that $1 million exemption is too low because homes are now worth so much more. And that we're taxing the middle class with the estate tax. But actually, in Oregon, for a number of years now, the estate tax has only been paid by people in the top 5%. And I'm pretty sure you don't think the middle class reaches to the 96th percentile. That's not close to the middle, 50 is the middle, not 96. It's that a lot happens before you die that uses up money often. And because you've used money to support your family all along. Most of us who have extra money have used it to help our kids with the cost of college and with the cost of the first house and to take them on nice vacations. And that we've given them a sense of stability and security that makes it easy for them to thrive. And that is a blessing that I hope can be there for Oregonians, not fewer Oregonians. And if we remove 300 million from the state's revenue, we would be serving a lot fewer people. We have something in the tax code for low-income people, the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, and the Kids Credit. Those two credits cost $100 million a year. Eliminating the estate tax would cost $300 million a year. We're doing something for about 2,200 families that could remove our ability to do something for about 220,000 families. I think that would be a mistake. Any change we make needs to be paid for so that we continue to take care of those that are needy and to give advantages to families that are trying to move up the scale, not just keep it all in one place. We heard Kevin say that we've already paid taxes all our lives, and why should we pay taxes on our estates when we die? The fact is, the average estate is 50% capital gains that have never been taxed. I've lived in my house for almost 50 years. There's $600,000 worth of value that happened that I did nothing to make happen that have never been taxed. If I die on the way home today, that $600,000 will be taxed by the estate tax. The same thing is true in my portfolio of investments. They've increased in value. I haven't needed all the money that's sat there. Things haven't been sold. And a lot of my net worth is gains that have never been taxed. They're gains that are created by the society we live in, not by the actions of our individual, strength somehow. And so that should be taxed. I think you have before you a page where I did some analysis of the what would happen if you have a $4 million estate in Oregon. So the gross estate is $4 million, and then you remove the exemptions for the two parties, the two parents, and you reduce something for gifts and debts that you might have upon death. And then there's the cost of closing the estates. And that's about $90,000 between the burial and the executor's fees. So that leaves an estate that will be taxed, $1,900,000 that will be taxed. So the estate tax would be due on $4 million is about $195,000. That really won't buy a new house in Montana. And moving to Montana would take you away from your family and friends. The reason lawyers and CPAs tell their clients you could move and avoid this is because if they don't tell it, you could sue them for not telling you everything. They're not really necessarily encouraging you to move. And in fact, some of my closest friends are people who will pay the estate tax, and they move to Portland. They move to Portland because that's where their kids are. And that's where your family, where your friends are. Those are the ways you make decisions. And so those are the things I think we should be thinking about when we think about this tax. Do we think the very wealthiest amongst us, the top 5%, can give a little more, some assets that have never been taxed, in order to have the kind of community we want to live in? Thank you.
Good. Jody, appreciate you. Both you and Kevin finished with about 40 seconds left, each of you. Tremendous. Helps our audience get a little extra time with you. Again, same reminder I gave you earlier. We are looking for questions. Commentary will be a little bit later. Peter, you can start us out.
So you indicated that the loss would be about 300 million, is that per biennium?
No, that's per year.
So that's less than 1% of the total budget. Have you done any kind of assessment to determine how much other tax revenue you're losing as a result of people losing the state?
There's no way to figure that out. There's no way to figure, I mean, who's going to figure out that my friends that moved here, they're paying income taxes, and they'll pay the estate tax. Is there really a balance? Right? I mean, there's no story about the people who come, there's a story about the people who go. And I've been advised that, to leave. But I probably will. If I end up in a nursing home, I will move out of state because I want to be closer to one of my kids. Right? I won't be deciding that based on the estate tax in the two states. I'll be deciding upon the circumstances of my two sons and their families.
You would be in agreement, though, that you do recognize our state population is actually headed down.
Yes, but I don't believe that's all the millionaires moving out of the state.
Kevin, retort to Peter's question.
Well, I do think that the whole point is I'm less into the economic analysis than I am into the fairness analysis about having paid taxes for your business, your income taxes, and your property taxes all your life. And then all of a sudden, because of the event of your death, another tax is imposed. I do want to clarify a point about the inheritance tax, which is different from the estate tax. We don't have an inheritance tax, and we shouldn't. The states that have that, it's usually exempting a number of family members. So it's an inheritance by people outside of the family. So there's other nuances to that. And there's a movement to get rid of those taxes too.
Yeah.
In no way does my question reflect the opinions of my organization, but taxpayer in Oregon, I'm assuming is making sure everyone pays their fair share, correct?
That's yes, that's one of our values.
Popular opinion, but always been a fan of sales tax. I wonder why Oregon doesn't have a sales tax when everybody purchases something. The ultra rich, middle class, the homeless will all buy stuff. I mean, is there a possibility that Tax Fairness Oregon champions a 1% sales tax in favor of getting rid of the death tax or the estate tax?
Well, I doubt that I would do that simply because sales taxes are actually regressive. Poor people spend virtually all of their money, and much of it would be taxed. Whereas, I just spend what I want to spend. I don't spend all my money. That's why I've got all that capital gain, right? And so, but there are changes. You can have a sales tax and not make it regressive, but you have to change your income tax structure, not just your estate tax structure to do it.
Director Blair and then Mark.
Question, so for either of you, in 2023, we moved the estate tax up for farmers, correct? So as an individual that's created a different business, why are we discriminating against the other businesses out there when I should have chose to be a farmer instead of building a business like that?
Who's that question directed to, Director Blair?
Either.
Want me to go first?
Sure.
I did it because it's the best I could do. I sold it to a number of my Democrat colleagues by saying, who are the best stewards of the environment? Families who own farms and ranches. So let's help them also because they are capital investment, land rich, cash poor. So I was able to make arguments to convince them to vote for that exemption. I'm very proud of having gotten that, but I realize now I've reached what I think is a dead end on the road to tax reform as to the estate tax. So we're creating a new road with this initiative.
I think that it's about the lobby. The farm lobby is extremely powerful, and they throw in forestry and fishermen. I mean, the fishermen got thrown in at the last minute, and there already was a provision before Mannix came along and did a provision. There's now two provisions. People have to figure out which one's the right one for them. There's quite a few differences between them. And for some people, one would be better than the other. But, well, you have to figure out what kind of investor you're talking about, because yes, but I'm an investor, but mine's all in the stock market. So where do you draw the line?
Mark?
Mark, I've been 37 years as a public teacher and did make a lot of money. Invested, did all those things, and now if I died, my family would have to pay an estate tax. I'm never in the 5% income range, probably in the bottom of 25%.
Right.
Yeah, because of my choices, my family are gonna have to pay, or my estate's gonna have to pay a tax.
I think you're right. Many people that have assets in the top 5%, and that's what the estate taxes, not income, actually live as middle income people. I do. I have a cheap car out there in the parking lot. I mostly buy used cars, so I probably do the same things you have, but I don't object to the fact that the society that has made it possible for me should get back something when I pass.
I'm gonna, if I could, Jody, end with the last question, and thank you for accepting presidential privilege or CEO privilege. Have you looked at the reverse side of this? If we remove this, how many and that 5% should not be discounted. We heard an incredibly powerful presentation of just how much of the tax burden that top 5% pays in this state. Have you done an analysis of how many people would actually stay in this community and continue to invest and put additional dollars and their families additional dollars if we did not push them out of the state at the end of life?
The research about moving says that it isn't really rich people that are moving. The research says that people move both ways, in and out. But all of the evidence, I mean, I know somebody that moved to Washington State because of taxes. And I know somebody that bought a house and pretended to move to Washington State when they sold their shares of a big piece of a. So those stories, but there's no story about my friends who moved here and they weren't looking at the estate tax, and they are doing all the things that the people who moved away were doing. They're contributing. They're paying their income taxes. They'll pay the estate tax. And I think there's stories going one way. That's primarily the problem.
Okay. Can I answer?
Sure.
Since 2020, Oregon's growth has flattened dramatically with almost zero net in-migration. And that means people are moving out as much as they're moving in. But something that's important in terms of looking at the figures is if we're talking about the revenue of the state and the tax structure, 0.6 on my sheet, our estate tax revenue makes up less than 1% of the budget, less than 2% of the revenue derived from Oregon taxes, general fund. So our point is, think about the money that we will keep receiving in terms of taxes. But I got to wrap up by saying, so Washington has made their estate tax worse. We're going to start getting Washingtonians who will come to Oregon to invest in our state because they'll say, what are they doing up there in Washington? Of course, California doesn't have one. Idaho doesn't have one. But I'll be interested in seeing what happens now that Washington has just put in a terrible tax rate on their death tax.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in thanking both of our speakers? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to tabulate votes. We will excuse our two speakers. I realize we are at our 3 o'clock hour. Programming like this is why you are a member of this organization. We need you and your friends in this room. It is absolutely inexcusable that we should not have 60 people every single time, at least, for conversations like this, because that affects our lives and the economic advocacy that this organization stands for. Thank you so much for sharing your vote. your opinion. We'll be tallying those numbers now. For those who wish to stay around, we will provide those totals. For those who leave, know that they will be going forward to our board of directors for an official position statement next week. With that, those of you online, please send me your vote to tom@salemchamber.org. We will be verifying those of you on Zoom for your valid vote. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.